One thing that leaders should always be mindful of is the idea that when people gather together, not only are they gathered together for a reason, for a cause, but they're gathered together in an emotional bond. And what I mean by that is people who gather together over work or gather together over coffee or gather together over a game night are sharing a common bond, an emotional bond, a relational bond. And sometimes that relational bond has a greater loyalty than does the employer or the leader. And just the relationship that you have as a leader of influence in somebody's life isn't always strong enough to overcome that bond. So what should leaders do to influence people who already have a common bond that they fall outside of? That's what I want to talk about today. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and this last week I've spent about half of the week at a convention. Now this is a national convention. It's a convention of people who are writers and speakers and teachers and people who are primarily into broadcasting. So they might do a podcast, they might have a television show, they might have a television show on a global network. They might be the gals that actually run or own the network. They might be the people who process the data for your network. One of the ladies, I spent quite a bit of time with her and her husband. They actually process DVDs, the Blu-rays, the USB drives. They can take a film and produce it in such a way that it's available to be seen in the big XD theaters, the 2K and 4K projections, et cetera, et cetera. They also warehouse and storage data for people. They do transcriptions and translations. And it's the kind of company that when you first walk by, you think, I don't know that I need all that stuff. Until you hear all of the things that they do. So for one big, giant movie production, for an example, they're a one-stop shop. They contain all of these services. But for a little guy like me who says, I just have this one teaching program that actually has been requested in Pakistan and they want it in Urdu. Well, I don't have anybody capable of doing that until now. But why we gathered, that was a different thing, and that really is my point. When we think about leadership, we think about influence because, well, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. But sometimes we forget that the level of influence that people have when they have a friendship, when they have a common bond, when they have history together, it lies outside of our influence as leaders. We may speak into their life because they work for us. We may speak into their life because in a smaller circle, in a group of 5 or 6, we have a relationship with them. But I witnessed a conversation between two people, and when the conversation was over, one of the people, the younger of the two, she was kind of staring at the business card, and you could tell the wheels were turning when the other individual walked away. And then I said to her, do you know who that was that you were talking to? She said, well, I have his card. I mean, I know his name, but I don't know much else about him. And so I rattled off a list of 4 or 5 people that I know for a fact are only in the industry of broadcasting because of that guy. And that guy has influenced hundreds of people who now have international broadcasting responsibilities. They're creating programs all over the world because of that guy. See, if you're an influencer, if you're a leader, if you're a business owner, and you don't know those kinds of long-term bonds, you might make the mistake and speak negatively against a guy like that, not realizing you've just cut your nose off to spite your face. You might say something like, well, I didn't really have a great conversation with that person, or I didn't feel like they were respectful. I didn't feel like they knew what they were talking about because they have so much knowledge, they can only give you a sliver. Like the company that provides so many services, there's no way I could engage them all. I couldn't afford to pay them for all the stuff that they do. I don't have $1 million movie budget. But for the things that I need them to do, they're very, very good at it because of all the other stuff they do. If I were having a conversation with one guy like that who's influenced hundreds, his knowledge and understanding about broadcasting from television antennas to concise little things like a transcript. His knowledge is way more than mine or most of the people that I know. His experience and the personalities and even the politics behind the scene of broadcasting is expansive. But the contacts and the relationships that he has, that is what you've got to be wary of. Because as a leader, you may think, well, I've got influence with these 5 or 10 people. I could have a conversation with them and it would change the direction they're going to go with their business. But one whisper from him, and you're outside the circle. One whisper from him, and they're not listening to you at all. One whisper from him to say, I had a conversation with this guy, and I don't think he knows what he's talking about. And you're done. So as a leader, I want you to remember that when people gather together, whether it's over a card game or it's over coffee or it's sitting around the fire pit at night waiting for the steaks on the grill, those affiliations, those conversations, those relationships could very easily trump whatever relationship you think you have with an individual, whatever reason they have for gathering with you, for listening to you, for even hiring you or paying you. Those things could be undermined and completely shut down. I did meet an individual who gave me their card and said, I do all of these things and I'd be glad to be involved in your project like this, this, and this. And then rattled off some names. It's common, right? You run into people and they name drop. But unfortunately for this individual, there were some names that individual dropped that are, well, within a tight circle, not only of each other, but with someone else that I do business with. So I just shot the picture of his business card over and said, hey, any of these people whose names he dropped actually know of him, know about him, would vouch for him, would speak credibly of him? And the answer came back, no, avoid him. He's lying. Well, that's a scary thought, but remember, the reason that we gather together with people is because we have a common interest with them, because we do something similar to each other. If you think as a leader that your leadership influence supersedes those long bonded relationships that have been built over years and years and years with deep, intimate knowledge of each other and industry, you are sadly mistaken. You may have the title, the clout, the knowledge for the day, but a decade's worth of information, a decade's worth of relationship, they will trump your knowledge just about every time. So ask yourself as a leader, the people that you influence, the ones that you gather around, how many of those people that you gather around would you trust over someone who comes in with a title and a label and a good sales pitch? I think you'll find that the ones that you gather with on a regular basis, the ones that you spend emotional family-like time with, they're going to hold all the cards. And the same is going to be true when you step into a new circle as well. As a leader, you've got to build those bonding relationships, and sometimes that takes more time than knowledge. I'm J Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.